Welcome to part 2 of the Media on the Brain seminar. By beholding, we become slaves to the high priests of a new religious order. This is one of my favorite presentations to do. I used to teach U.S. history, government, and economics. And when I taught in these areas, I would challenge the young people with the idea that the media culture and the advertising industry does not necessarily have your best interest at heart, to put it mildly. I enjoyed talking about and teaching and learning about how power works, how elites throughout history have managed societies. And you'll see some of that in this seminar today. You'll find that a lot of the things in this session actually, you don't even necessarily need to have a particular religious conviction about. As a free-thinking, autonomous human being, you might object very much to some of the things that you're going to hear about how manipulation takes place in a society. But before saying anything more, let's ask the Lord to guide our thoughts in this matter of analyzing these things. Father, we thank you again so much for this time to be together, to think about your will for us. Lord, we know that the devil is prowling around as a lion seeking whom he may devour. And he has many human agents at his disposal. And much of this is taking place in the media. We ask for discernment that we might know which areas are safe for us spiritually, which areas in this world we can seek you and escape from the traps of the devil. In Jesus' name, amen. I want to introduce you to one of my favorite individuals to study in American history. Not because I think he's a great guy. In fact, Edward Bernays, he is great in his influence, but he is the founder of modern advertising. So if you want to blame somebody for why we have advertising today and in public relations and this whole media culture of manipulating the minds of the masses, Edward Bernays is the one that started it all in America. He was an Austrian-American fellow, actually a nephew of Sigmund Freud. So he really knew how the human mind operates. As the grandfather of public relations in America today, 100 years ago nearly, he had tremendous amounts of influence in these areas of shaping public opinion. For example, he worked in propaganda for the United States government in World War I and actually wrote what became the textbook for Nazi propaganda in World War II. During his time in America, he was hired by the cigarette companies in one case. This is just an anecdotal story to give you the kind of influence this man had, give you a sense of it. The cigarette companies said, we want women to smoke in America because we could sell a lot more cigarettes if women would start smoking too, in addition to men. So they hired Edward Bernays. Mr. Bernays, we know that you are a master of the public mind. Please come to us and show us how we can get women to smoke. He put his genius mind to it and he said, I've got it. What he did was he hired the suffragettes. These were the women that marched for the women's right to vote. Very well-admired group of people standing for liberty and good things, women's right to vote. Not everybody liked them, but a lot of women in America looked up to them. Edward Bernays said, I'm going to take these women, hire them to put one of your cigarettes in the cuff of their blouse. So he takes the cigarette, gives it to the women, and they say, okay, what do we do with these? Well, when you get to the climax of your parade, this is what I want you to do. He told them what to do. The women are marching, suffragettes, right to vote, 19th Amendment. It wasn't called that yet, but at the end of the parade, they take out the cigarette. They light it, they smoke it, and just as Edward Bernays told them to do, they stand like this with their cigarette, and they shout, "Torches of freedom!" Think about this image. What does this look like? A torch being held up by a woman like this. This is Lady Liberty. He's now associated in the public mind women smoking with the true ideals of American liberty and the women's right to vote. He's got celebrities up there smoking as women. Women now can feel liberated. It's an American thing to do. It's a popular thing to do. And women started smoking in America. Edward Bernays is also known very famously for being the one behind the campaign to put bacon and eggs together for breakfast. The reason Americans believe bacon and eggs go together is because of his advertising campaigns. Immense power that he had all the way back in the 1920s. He wrote a book called Propaganda, actually charting and explaining what kind of influence and power that the media elite have, that these advertisers have over the minds of the masses. I want to give you a few quotations from Edward Bernays in his book Propaganda. He said, if we understand the mechanism and motives of the group mind, is it not possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without their knowing about it? Well, that sounds a little creepy. Yes, we, he said, can regiment the masses if we understand how the group mind works according to our will, and they won't even know about it. He goes on speaking of the conscious and intelligent manipulation. That's an important word. I used that word earlier. That's actually from Edward Bernays. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. Now that's a chilling statement coming from the founder of modern public relations. He says that the conscious and intelligent manipulation of our habits and our opinions, that our minds have been molded, our tastes have been formed, our ideas have been suggested by people we've never even heard of. Madison Avenue, the media elite, if you will. There's one more quotation I want to share from Edward Bernays about the power that they have. In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental process and the social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind. Even in our ethical thinking, our social conduct, how we do business, politics, all of it, the wires of our minds are very much being pulled by these people who understand the public mind, who understand how the group mind works. Now, is he overstating his case? Let's take a look. I think he's understating it, because given the fact of the tools he had back then in the 1920s when this book was written, his book was called Propaganda. Today, the media elite have multi-billion-dollar, high-tech, 21st century mass manipulation tools at their disposal. If he could say that 100 years ago nearly, how much more power do they have today? But many Americans, we kind of get in denial. We're a bit naive. We say, I'm an American. I have freedom. How can you say that there is such control over me? We have a free press. We have freedom in America. And I would say, according to one philosopher who wrote the following, none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. Because it may be true, and it is true, that to a great degree we have external political freedom in America and in Canada. To a great degree, we have a lot of freedom here in North America. But the question is not about your religious freedom and your right to vote. The question is your mind free? We want to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. I was listening to my favorite material possession, my iPod, second only to my own personal Bible, which has my notes in it. But I love the iPod because I could put my Bible right on there. Many people would be their iPhone. You can listen to the Bible as you go about your business. You can listen to sermons, conferences, books. I was listening to a book called Mind, Character, and Personality as I was walking at a beautiful camp in northern Michigan. And I came across a statement that absolutely shocked me. This again was from an author from the 19th century. I love listening and reading things from the past. People had insight back then that we just don't have today. And in this book, this following quotation was stated, and I had to pause my iPod and listen to it again. I was like, wait a minute, what did they just say? Through the channel of mesmerism, and that's another word for hypnotism, Satan comes more directly to the people of this generation and works with that power, which is to characterize his efforts near the close of probation. Now, close of probation is language that you don't hear thrown around that much today. The probationary time is the time period that we have until the very end of time, and then Jesus will come. So it's basically the time we have to make a decision for or against Christ in these last days and to share the message of the gospel, the everlasting gospel. So what this quote is saying is near the end of that time. So I believe that's right now. I believe we're in the last days right now. Near the end of that time, Satan will use mesmerism. So I'm going, that's an interesting prediction. Is it possible that Satan is using hypnotism today for his ends? And by the way, why would it be Satan's methods? Why don't we have evangelists get up before large groups of people and use hypnotic methods to get them to accept the gospel? Well, of course, we don't do that because hypnotism doesn't run around the person's reason and self-control and their own autonomy. The method of hypnotism is a brainwashing, manipulative technique that doesn't allow the person freedom of choice. And so that would be one of Satan's methods, not one of God's. Now, is it possible, I asked, I wanted to know how they do hypnotism today. You remember in the olden days, they'd swing a watch in front of your eyes, right? They don't do it that way anymore. Today, according to the use of light and sound technology with hypnosis, according to Dr. Stephen Freitag, today light and sound do the work for deep relaxation in a fraction of time of traditional methods by using specific frequencies of audio and visual input. So we use light and sound. We use a frequency of light to get somebody under a hypnotic trance. Satan will use hypnotism near the close of probation. Well, now I don't know a lot of people that go to a hypnotist. I don't know hardly anybody that goes to a hypnotist. I know a lot of people, though, that are being induced into an altered state of consciousness by a flashing frequency of light. And what is that? If you drive down the road on a dark evening in the winter and you see this blue glow in the living room of the homes of America, this flashing screen, what is that? That is the television. Now, don't believe that the television is hypnotic because a clever graphic artist on the internet put together that graphic. Let's take a look at the brain and see if we can make sense of this and confirm whether this is true or not. I want to talk about different brainwave patterns that you can be in, states of consciousness, if you will. If you're in beta, what's called beta waves, that means that your brain waves are in high frequency. It means that your brain is on. You're really thinking. You've got your critical thinking going. You've got your moral filter up. You're exercising self-control. Those are called beta waves. Now, you can also slip down into a more relaxed state of mind, and that's called an alpha wave pattern, where if you're entering into, say, New Age meditation, you're going to hum like this, you're getting into this very relaxed mindset. That is a highly suggestible, dreamy, hypnotic state of mind, according to the science. Now, if you read in the Journal of Cognitive Liberty the following, you'll see how television can actually get you down into these alpha waves out of your beta waves. Psychophysiologist Thomas Mulholland found that after just 30 seconds of watching television, the brain begins to produce alpha waves, which indicates torpid, almost comatose rates of activity. Alpha brainwaves are associated with unfocused, overly receptive, there's an important word, states of consciousness. A high-frequency alpha wave does not normally occur when the eyes are open. In fact, Mulholland's research implies that watching television is neurologically analogous to staring at a blank wall. I should note that the goal of hypnotists is to induce slow brainwave states. Alpha waves are present during the light hypnotic state used by hypnotherapists for suggestion therapy. So you just heard it. When you're watching television, within 30 seconds, you go from beta down into alpha and you're undergoing suggestion therapy. You're in a highly receptive state of consciousness. And the reason it does this, by the way, have you ever watched somebody watch TV? Now that's entertaining right there. Walk into a room where somebody's watching TV, especially a dark room, you'll notice it. And let's say the TV's here, the wall is here, and their couch is here. So they're vegged out on watching the TV. The first thing you'll notice is on the wall behind them, what's happening? There's a flash. About every 3 seconds, there's a flash. And what is that flash from? Well, if you come and look at the television, you'll notice that, say, they're watching a TV show and a guy, gets out of the car. The camera shows the door close. Then the camera shows the guy's face. Then the camera shows the guy walking this way toward the door. Then a different angle shows the hand going like this. And literally every 3 seconds on average in theatrical style television, there is a frame of reference change. So it's rapidly paced like Dr. Christakis talked about. So then, he knocks on the door, then the camera shows the dog, then the one guy's talking, then the other guy's talking, then the one guy's talking, and they keep the dialogue very quick. This is not the same in documentaries. In a documentary, the guy has a thought that takes him 20 seconds to express. Or say you're watching a sermon or the Media on the Brain DVDs. There's not a rapid frame of reference change every 3 seconds constantly doing that. Plus, with a documentary or a seminar or a sermon like this, the frontal lobe is being activated, the beta waves are being turned on because the information is frontal lobe in nature rather than being limbic in nature and inducing emotional reactions. So all of that from last session coming back into this session, the rapid frame of reference changing is what is turning the frontal lobe off and getting you into this alpha trance. Now, this is kind of funny. My wife and I told you, used to watch TV, and we would be sitting there, especially during the advertisements. She would get very much into this. I knew about this before I was fully devoted to Jesus Christ and sharing the message of the gospel. And I didn't want to be messed with by the advertisers, so I would turn my eyes off the screen during the advertisements. But my wife would be sitting there, and she'd just get totally zoned in during the advertisements. She'd get this look on her face, like that, and I'd say, "Hey, honey, what do you want to have for supper?" And her response was just, "Nobody's home." She didn't even hear me. And you probably know this anecdotally. Some people get totally just... It affects everybody, some people more, especially the advertisements. We're going to talk about that more in a minute. But this is the reality. When we are watching this, and this is why the Journal of Cognitive Liberty says, realizing that viewers automatically enter a trance state while watching television. You are in a trance. Marketers, that means advertisers, began designing commercials that produce unconscious emotional states or moods within the viewer. The aim of commercials is not to appeal to the rational or conscious mind, which usually dismisses advertisements, but rather to implant moods that the consumer will associate with the product when it is encountered in real life. Now, it gets even more serious because it's not just observed in the science that this is what's happening to the brain, but if you actually look at the big advertisers like Ernest Dichter, he stands right next to Edward Bernays as one of the most important in advertising history. He's the one that created the concept of a focus group. He coined the term. And he actually ran an institute called the Institute for Motivational Research. Advertisers want to know, what is it that motivates us? Is it the sex drive? Is it fear? Is it insecurity? What is it? And we can tap into that and we can get them to buy the product. Well, in 1946, he founded the Institute for Motivational Research, and a document was leaked out of this in a couple of years after that that sort of described what they were doing in this institute. Take a look at this. This was a top secret document that was leaked out, and it says the course, the training course that they're giving students, is an adventure into the mental frontiers that will challenge even the most stalwart individual. You will learn how to slow thought waves and enter the alpha and others. But you get the point here. The point here is we are going to deliberately teach you how to alter states of consciousness. Why would advertisers be interested in that? Well, because they know that they can more get you to do what they want you to do if your beta waves aren't on, your critical thinking moral filter isn't up. If they can get you down and in that trance state, they can get stuff in there that will make you do things you wouldn't have otherwise done. I appreciate their honesty here. They say techniques we're going to give you techniques that will put your newly acquired secret knowledge to work for you. Initiation into the psychological concepts and manipulative stratagems of the art course often comes as a shock to those naive individuals. 36% of all previous candidates dropped out in disgust within the first 3 days. These are squeamish types of people that aren't suited for the psychological demands of this fast-paced, secretive business. They're very honest and open when speaking to their own. Now, if you're familiar with the big controversy of the post-World War II era in the movies, it was subliminal messages. We didn't know they were doing this about the alpha waves until much later, but people were caught slipping subliminal messages into the movies to make you go buy popcorn and whatnot. And people have questioned whether that actually worked or not. The latest studies have shown absolutely that subliminal messaging has a powerful effect. There's a good documentary on this called The Home Hypnotist, put out by a great group of people called Little Light Studios. You can actually get that at beltoftruthministries.com. And they've shown definitively, the studies have shown that these subliminal messages do have an effect. And I'm going to put one on the screen right now. I'm not going to cover all the territory that they've covered in that film because they've already done it. But the sexual subliminal stuff, by the way, don't study it because you'll see stuff you didn't want to see. Just a quick note on that. Don't Google subliminal messages and start getting interested in studying that. It's highly inappropriate. But I will show you the word sex. Do you see this Axe shampoo bottle? Do you see a subliminal message on there? Do you see the word sex? I was sharing this message about subliminal messages, and a student walked up to me. He said, Mr. Ritzma, look. He had gotten this bottle from his cabin. I was speaking at a camp. He said, look, a subliminal message. I thought, yeah, he's probably just making something of nothing. I'm going, whoa, it really is. I'll circle it for you. There it is. You see the S formed with the steam, and then the E and the X. Now we say, well, that's silly. Why would they do such a thing? If they can get into your subconscious something that activates limbic circuits, that shuts down frontal lobe circuits, because they're often competing like this, activates limbic circuits, it'll get you in this feeling of wanting to consume, wanting pleasure. This is what they do. And in fact, 95% of visuals, even hidden visuals, are picked up by the subconscious mind. The famous neurosurgeon Ben Carson once stated that he could put you up in front of a big church auditorium with rows and rows and rows of people with a blindfold on your eyes. Then he could take the blindfold off your eyes for 5 seconds, put the blindfold back on, and you know what is now recorded in your brain? He said the face of every single person in there, in that auditorium, is in your brain, plus what they were wearing. Now, could you consciously recall that and point it out and identify? Most of us couldn't, but there are people that have an uncanny ability to tap into those areas of the brain. They can. People that can, idiot savants, as they're called, who can be a genius in one particular area, and you're just like, how can you do that? Well, that possibility, that data is in all of our brains. 95% of all visuals are picked up, even by the subconscious mind, when you don't see them. So subliminal messages do actually have an effect. Now, my contribution to the discussion is a leaked document that I found online. This was actually mailed to Dr. Eldon Taylor many years ago, and it was published in his book, Mind Programming. I don't endorse all of this stuff in there, but this has been out and available, but I want to share it with you so that you can see what these insiders have, the way that they've talked about their advertising. This is a leaked training document, or rather a sales pitch document on how they do subliminal messaging. So it's an actual cigarette company explaining how they do subliminal messaging for the cigarette company.